Blog Talk Radio.
Bienvenidos a WEXP 88.3, donde lo hacemos mejor. Soy Evelyn Bernal y este es mi programa Entre Mujeres.
Happy Thursday! End of the week. Aren't you guys girls all happy that we're almost there? We're going to be done soon. Well, I hope that this is your almost beginning of the weekend too, since I know there is some of us that still have to work on the weekend. But at any rate, even if you're working Saturday and Sunday, Friday, they just have a different vibe. So thank you for tuning in with us today. We're going to talk about something that it surprises me every time I talk about this. Very few of us could say, hey, they've actually talked. I talked about this before with other people, with my parents I was growing up. Because sometimes even if we do bring up the subject, it's not maybe like in this terminology. We're going to talk about two things, setting limits and self-esteem. I've touched on it a little before on our show. However, I don't think that we've talked about it together. So I kind of want to expand on that today because it's very, very critical. Self-love is the most important type of love that you can experience. It affects so many parts of our relationship. Like, I feel like everything that we do literally filters through the perception that we have about ourselves and through the type of self-love that we have. So I want to share this information with you because, like I said before, I feel like emotional intelligence has the ability to impact our quality of life, literally. There are a lot of us that, we are living unfulfilled lives, not because the situation around us isn't good sometimes, but because there's internal states that don't allow us to experience the happiness in life. Every situation is different. I do know that. And there are situations that are more challenging than others. There are some of us who had to struggle to get ahead in life, and sometimes that kind of drags on us and doesn't allow us to fully be happy. But I'll tell you something. The research shows that when a situation occurs to us, 70% of how the situation impacts us is how we respond to it. 70%. 30% is the situation, and 70% is how we respond to it. And obviously, how do we respond to situations? We see it through the lens of our own self-concept. So let's establish first, what is self-love? What is self-esteem? Well, self-esteem or self-love is how we feel about ourselves, how we value ourselves, and how we feel that others see us and how we see that others value us. Therefore, maybe if we have a stable self-esteem would be, I know that as a person I have flaws, and I know that as a person I have weaknesses, but it's okay. I accept myself. That would be a stable self-esteem. I am not talking about, there are individuals, there are some of us girls that believe that because we are egotistical and selfish, we have a good self-esteem. But actually, no, ladies. I think that, or when an individual has an inflated ego, that doesn't mean they have good self-esteem. That means they have poor self-esteem, but they're trying to mask it by being egotistical, by trying to feed their appearance. A bad self-esteem or a negative self-esteem would be that you feel like you do not have value as a person. You feel like you don't have much to offer, but you also feel that others see you in this manner. And so that is how we're going to discuss self-esteem today. That's the lens that I'm going to be using. I don't know everything, ladies. I really don't. Sometimes we act like we do, but I act like I do maybe, but I don't know everything. But I'll tell you something. This path of self-exploration has done so much good in my life. It's not easy. Looking inward is not easy because our our tendency is to kind of look outward and see what's not going well around us, but it's very rare that we are introspective. But I'll tell you, that's where the benefits are. You want to feel better about yourself? Don't be looking outside. People have nothing to offer you when you do not love yourself. So today, make yourself that pledge. Today, repeat after me, today I am looking inward because I want to measure the amount of self-love that I have for myself and how it impacts my relationship and setting limits. And so where did our self-esteem come from? How did we get to the point where we are today? So let's rate our self-esteem, okay? On a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being I feel like I am the gift to humanity, I'm so awesome, and 0 being I have zero self-esteem, I have nothing to offer, I do not value myself. Rate yourself on a scale from 0 to 10 and ask yourself, how much do I love myself? You might, if you are a person that loves yourself 50%, like out of 5, meaning like most of the time I don't love myself, and then most of the times I do love myself, it's kind of equal, then rate yourself out of 5. So use that scale, interpret it as you will accordingly. So think about, when was the last time that somebody asked you, how much do you love yourself? I have asked a group of kids when I do my self-esteem workshops with youth, and I ask them. I remember one time I had a group, I think all together, it was kids, not all at the same time. They came in little groups of like 10 or 12. And so I asked them, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you love yourself? And then, when was the last time that your parents or somebody else asked you how much you loved yourself? And I think out of those 50, without exaggeration, maybe 2 said, yeah, somebody's asked me. 2 said, yeah, somebody's asked me. 1 said, my parents. The other 1 said, you are the only one who's asked me how much I love myself. And why is that important? I'm talking about, the new trend now is, just look out for yourself. You're number 1. I'm not talking about being selfish, even though you should be number 1 in your book, and even though you are the most important person. But interpersonal skills are always about a balance. You can't go, extremes are not healthy. Extremes are not skills. They are reactions. Skills are being in the middle, being able to establish some kind of middle ground and stability. I understand we're not always going to love ourselves. We're not always going to be at 100% because obviously there's situations that impact our self-esteem. However, the point is that even when you are going through things that threaten your self-esteem, that you are able to pull yourself to that place where you say, you know what, I love myself. I don't deserve this. Or I'm going to work hard because I deserve this. That's what I'm talking about. So the kids were saying, nobody asked us how much we loved ourselves. We were raised to, and I don't think parents mean wrong. I am a mother. You are probably a mother too. And we don't mean wrong, but we push our kids because make something out of yourself. For those of us who have children that are overachievers, we push them and push them and we kind of put our own goals into them because we are maybe, we didn't get as far in life as we would want to and we want them to. So we're pushing them to have goals in life. We're pushing them to have these accomplishments, and we don't have that simultaneous effort of saying, hey, invest in yourself, invest in that self that is inside, invest in that voice that talks to you every day, so that voice and those thoughts are kind to you. Because self-esteem is such an abstract concept, most of us really wouldn't know how to talk about it or how to measure it. But I will tell you a little practical tip that might help you understand maybe where you are at with your self-love. Think about the voices in your head. I'm not talking about psychotic symptoms. I'm talking about that voice in your head, your inner thoughts and how you talk to yourself, that inner language. How do you talk to yourself when you make a mistake? That's going to be the perfect telltale. So is that thought inside of you, is it compassionate? Is that thought inside of you self-defeating? Are those thoughts inside of you, that inner voice, is it cruel? Is it a perfectionist? Is it a severe, critical voice inside of you? Because that is going to be your perfect measure. I don't know. We all put on this facade. We all go on in life, especially women, with a little bit of pride, like nobody needs to know that I am struggling. We put on this mask. We dress up. We go about our day. And sometimes we are hiding that critical voice inside of us with constantly nagging, things like, I want to keep it PG here because I am on the radio, but just think about the worst thing that you've told yourself, like, oh, my God, you're such an idiot. You always do the same thing, and we talk to ourselves in this manner when, you know what, we wouldn't even talk to another person that way. But we freely go about our day criticizing and judging ourselves. And that is an indication of the type of self-love that we have, because somewhere along the line, ladies, we internalize this voice. We internalize this message, something about our experience, something about maybe the relationships we had, something about maybe that toxic job we have, I don't know, or something about that positive interaction, that great upbringing, those solid values formed those thoughts inside of us. And maybe you are a compassionate person. We internalized a message about ourselves, and believe it or not, even if you don't consciously think about it, that thought, my dear, is what dictates every day how you love yourself. It dictates every day what you allow, how you allow other individuals to treat you, and what you tolerate on a day-to-day basis. So you're going to say, well, Evelyn, what does self-esteem have anything to do with setting limits? Well, it has everything to do with setting limits. And I'm going to tell you why right this second. So if I am a person with a low self-esteem, I'm on the low side of self-esteem, okay? And so if I inherently believe that I am inferior, if something somewhere along the line in life, because of my critical parent, because my mom was always criticizing me and I couldn't do anything right, or because, I was a neglected child, or because I had a toxic relationship where this guy was always telling me, like, everybody else was better. So when I internalize this inner message, right, if this is how I feel about myself, or if I believe that women shouldn't speak up, because I'm going to be honest with you, I am from an immigrant family. My family is Mexican, and there are great values about being a Mexican. I love it. I like the food, the culture, the family, the togetherness. I love it. But I'm going to tell you something else that is inherent in our culture, enmeshed in our cultural fabric. Women are not expected to speak up. Women are not expected to have an opinion and to stand up and say exactly how they feel. That was actually very frowned upon when I was a child, and I cannot tell you enough how many times. I remember one of my aunts told me one time, you know why I don't like you? Because you always say what's on your mind. And what was I doing? But she made me feel like there is something wrong with me, because I've always been that kind of person who says exactly what's on their mind. Obviously, I've had to kind of learn skills to not always say exactly what's on my mind. And so these are the messages that you internalize. And so when it comes time to setting a limit with someone, when they're all like, well, when somebody's being rude to you, when somebody is maybe taking advantage of you, this includes our kids, our coworkers, our significant other, when somebody is neglecting you, what are the chances that you're going to set a healthy limit when you don't believe that you deserve it, when you don't have the confidence to say, hey, no, I don't want to do it, or you know what, that's not acceptable? How likely is it that we're going to set that limit? It's very unlikely. It's very unlikely because, again, I'm telling you, ladies, everything is filtered through the type of self-love that we have for ourselves. Some of us came with it. We had already internalized these messages about ourselves, not necessarily because we were abused, but like culturally, like that example that I gave you. You know, our elders, our aunts, our uncles, this message that we received about how girls should behave, sometimes those inner messages come from our upbringing, even if it wasn't bad, even if it wasn't abusive. But especially if it was abusive and especially if it was bad, then we kind of have this inherent way of seeing the world that is filtered through us feeling maybe like we are not entitled to it. Like maybe, I'll give you a perfect example. And again, ladies, I hate to sound redundant because I've seen that I do sometimes. It's so difficult to explain these things because they're inside of you. Like how do you concretely explain them? But I will give you an example. In our day-to-day life, you know, we have to make choices. We have to make decisions. We have to make decisions that impact the well-being of others, like our children, like our spouses. And sometimes, obviously, like in order to have a reaction, in order to answer yes or no to a request, we have to have all the information, right? We have to ask questions. You will not believe how much asking questions is tied to our self-concept. And where is the first place where we are embarrassed to ask questions? We are embarrassed to ask questions when we start a relationship, because what message do us ladies get about asking questions? Like, oh, no, and I don't want to use this term in a derogatory manner. I'm just like quoting verbatim a statement that I have used or I have heard to be used often. Well, did you ask them when something is off with our spouse or our boyfriends, our significant others, whatever? Well, did you ask him? And you're like, no, I don't want to ask him because he's going to be like, why are you acting all psycho? Have you heard that word? Has anybody used that word on you because you were asking questions that were normal, that were maybe expected, that obviously, like, you have the right to ask if you were in a relationship? And so sometimes we don't ask questions because we are not confident, because what were we taught? Think about it. How many of us ask questions in a relationship, especially when a relationship is starting? We don't ask questions because we don't want to be perceived as psycho or dramatic. And so what happens, we have to find this information out when the relationship progresses, and then we're at the point where like all the love hormones set in and we are basically stuck, ladies. We find this information out like into the relationship because we didn't ask those important questions from the beginning. And believe me, asking questions is a form of setting limits, because, okay, if you're going to go buy a car, because when you're in a relationship, you're going to buy it. Whatever you do, whatever type of relationship it is, when you're in a relationship, you are going to buy it. You are going to have to live with it. It's something that you're going to make an investment on. Think about when you're going to go buy a car, okay? Oh, this car, obviously, like, they make it super presentable. They don't want, even when sometimes it's not in a very functional manner, sometimes they want to make it appear as if this car is working because they want to sell it to you, right? And so most of us will be like, well, you know, Carfax, has it been in any collisions? How many miles does it have? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we want to make an informed decision before we invest our precious money into an asset. Well, it's the same with relationships. Asking questions before you buy it might prevent you some heartache in the future. It's setting limits. I'm going to tell you something that I ask myself constantly. I don't know why culturally it's like that. I don't think it's just in my culture. I think it's in, Mexico and the U.S. too. I've seen it. Obviously, like I've been able to interact with both cultures. And I have seen, not that I'm completely versed in any of them, I'm just saying my experience. So tell me why we meet the guy's parents when the relationship is already serious. Have you noticed that it's a symbol of, if you meet the parents, then it's going to be official? Well, think about it. Sometimes we don't meet the parents until like it's getting serious, but you can tell a lot by somebody's parents. But how many of us are going to dare to say, you know what? I'm not going to go any further with this relationship until I meet the parents. I don't know. I think it's a limit. It's one of those traditions that I don't know where it came from. I guess it kind of makes sense. You don't want to introduce them until it's serious. But on the other hand, don't you want to know where this person comes from before you proceed in a relationship where you proceed to maybe invest feelings in this relationship? Just talking about limits that don't make sense. But again, the majority of us would never bring that up because why? Because we're not confident. We don't want to be perceived as crazy or psycho or like we want to meddle in their life. So it's something that very few of us will do. What I will tell you is asking questions in a relationship when it starts is a healthy form of setting limits because you want to know what you're getting into before you buy it. In my perception, it's I want to make an informed decision. So if you tell me, you know what, this car is having issues with the muffler, but it's $500 and it'll be as good as new, that's why I'm selling it for this price, then I can decide, hey, do I have $500 to invest in this car? But if they don't tell me, then I'll be stuck with a product that I had no money to invest in. Same thing with relationships. When we ask questions, we decide. We can make an informed choice of whether this is something that we really want to pursue. It's important, ladies. It's important to set limits. Importantly, in order to set limits, we have to feel confident with ourselves. We have to make sure that voice inside of us is compassionate. Because if we have a solid sense of ourselves, not talking about arrogance, just a solid, stable sense of ourselves. If that voice inside of us is accepting of us, if we as women talk to ourselves and say, you know what, yeah, maybe there are plenty of individuals that are better than me or better looking, but this is what I have to offer. These are my skills. This is who I am as a person, and I perfectly accept myself. Do you think there's a possibility that maybe when we invest in our sense of self, do you think that maybe there's a possibility that we are going to be able to assert ourselves when somebody is being disrespectful or when somebody is being hurtful to us? Absolutely, because, hey, at the end of the day, what do I tell myself? I don't deserve this kind of treatment, or this is not what I want because I am confident. Whereas if that voice inside of us continually reminds us of how useless we are or how much nobody cares for us, then when somebody comes along and they want to treat us in the same manner, it's not going to be a shock to our system. We are going to accept it. In fact, we are going to ignore the red flags that were there prior to us fully committing to a relationship that is going to be hurtful to us. It's difficult, especially because we invest in relationships every day. Am I a relationship expert? No, but obviously every day I interact with my spouse, I interact with my kids, and I have seen how the more stable my self-esteem is, the more I am able to make choices that are healthy for me and are healthy for my family, and at the same time, I am able to set those limits that are going to keep myself protected. When you drive down the freeway, there's little white squares with black numbers that for some reason I don't see most of the time. I don't process them. There's a speed limit. And what is the point of a speed limit? Well, they say that it's to keep us safe. It's to keep other people safe. That's why when you drive through a school, 5 miles an hour here, 15 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit is because it's designed to protect the children that are crossing in case that there were to be a collision, that there's less chance that that person will be fatally wounded, etc. That's the purpose of setting limits. Setting limits keeps us safe from an abusive relationship. It keeps us safe from being exploited at work or at our home. It keeps us safe from our children being disrespectful to us. It keeps us safe from even, you know what? Setting limits even keeps us safe from contracting a venereal disease. Perfect example, unprotected sex, right? You get in the heat of the moment, one thing is going to lead to the other. Nobody has protection. When you are not confident and when you are not comfortable and when what you want is to please the other person, sometimes you go straight for the act, even though there's a possibility that you don't know where this person has been. Boundaries and limits protect us from things like abuse, from being emotionally hurt, and it also protects us from contracting venereal diseases. And so you see how important it is and how it all goes together. Anyway, ladies, I feel like I just rambled on forever and ever, but I do want to hear from you. I am on Facebook and Instagram. I am Evelyn Bernal, life coach. And I would love to hear any ideas that you have for topics or any mental health related, emotional health related that you want to hear about. I'll be happy to talk about them. It's been a pleasure. Every Thursday, I look forward to speaking to you. Thank you for tuning into my show. I do want to ask you to follow me, give me likes, send me comments like, hey, we didn't like this topic, we liked it. Because this show is for you. Remember, this is between women. And so don't forget, next Thursday we will be here at the same time, and we are going to talk about, between women, we are going to talk about social media etiquette. Because it's an issue. Talk about, how it impacts couples. What is appropriate social media behavior? Like, do you not friend any girls? Do you not friend any guys? I know a lot of us have that kind of lingering in our head, and I have too, so I want to talk about it with you next Thursday. Thank you for joining me. This is Evelyn Bernal, and this was your show, Between Women.